Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We will begin in just a moment. There are a few more people logging on. I'd like to give everyone a chance to get started. Thank you. Test, test. Hello, everyone. Fed Results would like to welcome you to our Tableau webcast. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. All of your lines have been muted to reduce background noise, and we hope you take advantage of the Q&A pod on the left side of your screen. We will do our best to answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation, but if for some reason we don't get to your question, the Tableau team at Fed Results will follow up with you offline. Our contact information will be at the end of the presentation, so please do not hesitate to email or call us with any questions or for more information. This webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the archived recording will be emailed to you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Jeff. Jeff, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. We understand that Adobe Connect is down, so there may be one or two glitches, but hopefully you all can hear me clearly. Certainly, please provide comments in the interaction space on the webinar if you are having problems, and we'll see if we can resolve those. First, I'd just briefly like to introduce REI Systems, since many of you may not be familiar with us. REI provides custom software development, analytics, and advice on how to improve efficiency for federal agencies. We focus on grant management heavily over the 29 years since our founding as a recipient of a NASA Small Business Innovation and Research Grant, although our clients now span health, scientific research, financial management, and general government domains. One of the reasons we're here to talk to you today is because we've had some significant success. One of our clients recently won an ACT-IAC Igniting Innovation Award as the top awardee amongst more than 100 different federal nominees for some of their work in analytics that REI has been supporting. Today in the webinar, actually what we would like to do is talk about ways to kind of take some of those lessons from a number of our different analytics clients and discuss with you not just kind of how to deal with those on a kind of an individual analyst basis or a kind of an individual program basis, but think about ways to address them and succeed with them on an agency-wide basis. And as you're aware, in many agencies, there's a strong interest in data-driven decision-making. But the problem is that a lot of the data resides in completely different types of systems. Some of it may be in HR systems, some of it may be in financial systems, some of it may be in operational systems, such as those used for case management, project management, or grants management. In the frontline folks, frankly, aren't necessarily easily able to make a lot of decisions pulling data because they aren't able to get data easily from those range of different systems. And what's more, many of them kind of provide data primarily in their own swim lane, but they don't really see a good mix of information back, especially that lets them see kind of a variety of different swim lanes and help fit themselves into context. Frankly, they can't tell whether they're kind of ahead of or behind expectations, how they're doing in comparison to peers, and they can't really diagnose why they're succeeding or why they're not succeeding. As well, often data isn't really timely or understandable. So what we'd like to do is to kind of talk through briefly in this webinar a little bit about kind of a framework that helps you think about the culture, sharing of data, what potential uses can be made of data, customers and how to address their needs, risks of use or misuse of data, data quality tools, and governance. We'll also share some principles generally, but also some really specific lessons learned from some of the work we've done where we've had clients succeed. As well, what I want to do to kind of start with is introductions, and I probably should have started with this a little bit ago. I am Senior Director at REI Systems, responsible for advisory services and analytics, And I'm joined by Rajuta Waknis, who is a program manager at REI Systems focusing on grants. She leads REI's grants offering, and that's actually going to be kind of the case example we use today. She's worked with enterprise grants management systems for over 6 years. And as well, we're both joined by Ankit Mittal, who is our grants analytics lead. He's a technology-focused leader with more than 10 years of experience in designing and implementation and adoption of data analytics, business intelligence, and data warehouse projects. He recently implemented an efficient and scalable modern business intelligence and analytics platform at a federal agency, helping democratize data-driven decision-making. And frankly, I think what's really special about what Ankit, Rajuta, and their team have done is they aren't just kind of 2 or 3 folks using the analytics systems that they've helped our clients create. Frankly, there are hundreds. In one agency alone that we'll offer in a couple of places as an example, more than 250 different members of that agency are making regular use of the analytics tools. And I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. It is an ability to not only gather data and present it in an intelligent way, but to make it usable so that people want to use it and are able to significantly impact decision-making and improve the program mission outcomes based on the data-driven decisions. So let me briefly and last, before I turn it over to Judah, offer you a bit about the kind of the purpose and the goals that we're hoping to achieve today and the benefits we think you'll see from this information. The purpose here is frankly to help you structure your own agency's analytics capability, and to do so by sharing with you a number of best practices, both in terms of kind of the technology structures as well as some of the culture and practices. The goal, bluntly, is so that you can compare your own organization structure and practices to these best practices, figure out where you're meant to be short, where you're just kind of at or above expectation, and give you a chance to kind of learn a little bit more. Certainly, of course, we're happy to answer questions at the end of the webinar, and we're often, of course, available, of course, after the fact if you'd like to have a more extended discussion. The benefits, I think, are twofold. One is you may be able to improve your agency's mission success by getting a wider range of folks to use data and to use that not only for kind of strategic things like where should we focus, how can we get budget, but also for tactical things like how do we make a decision today, perhaps, for example, on making a grant award decision. And then the second benefit that I think is perhaps subtle but important, a lot of data is gathered in federal agencies that really never gets used. And the question is, if we can do a better job of focusing on kind of what uses are made of the data and implementing intelligible systems to manage it, we can eliminate the time and effort spent managing, gathering data that just isn't used and isn't useful. So with that, let me turn it over to Rajuta and ask Rajuta you to talk a little bit about kind of strategy and architecture.
Thanks, Jeff. So we're here thinking about the agency's BI capabilities, and you think that there's more to achieve possibly with the rich data that you know you have. Where do you begin? How do you frame what needs to happen? And how far can you go? In this section, we're going to take a look at the main drivers for BI initiatives, a model for self-assessment, and then a framework to form analytics platforms. So what is the need to modernize BI? In a typical IT shop, when funding and personnel are constrained, analytics don't always get the priority. When there's only a few specialized resources, staff are dependent on them to get that data or generate insights and are not really able to move the needle on their own. So our experience at an HHS Optiv was that it took staff a significant amount of time and operations tickets to IT support to be able to reconcile financial grant data between planning all the way through funding and awards for the crucial end of year reporting activities. This increased the turnaround time for then the reports to go back to Congress. Another common problem we've seen is that the rich data does exist, but is spread out amongst multiple data sources. Aggregation of these data pieces is manual and slow, which again increases turnaround time for generating insights. As the applications and even the media channels increase, the number of data sources also increases, which only compounds the problem. So in the reconciliation example I just mentioned, those grant system reconciliations then needed to be compared against additionally appropriations and bureau budgets, which were not hosted in the grant system, but were in a different location. For those activities, then it took another few tickets and additional manual comparisons to be able to compare the funding data. For programs that are looking to improve their effectiveness or even expand their outcomes, the policy in these situations doesn't get driven by data but by guidelines or concepts. This year, the President's management agenda has focused on results-oriented accountability for grants under the cross-agency priority goal number 8. One of the requested outcomes of this goal is measurement of progress and sharing lessons learned and best practices. Getting to measure progress and practices that work is going to necessitate a strong BI backbone. Our HHS experience has been that there are some bureaus who are actually pretty advanced in being able to collect their clinical data outcomes through measures captured in annual performance or progress reports. But then generating trends or comparing the outcomes of one grantee versus another requires a lot of back-end reporting work and sometimes even costly report releases. One more area that many agencies struggle in is risk management. When the data exists in silos, risk identification is also then conducted in those silos. For example, if one program has identified a grantee as a high risk for poor program requirement compliance or even lack of financial management systems, the data about that grantee and any corrective actions taken is not available to other programs that might currently be in the process of awarding another grant to the same organization. The finance functions at the agency might have more specific information, like contacts from the organization that have been marked for exclusion in SAM.gov. This information is then difficult to distribute to all the programs. This becomes a big barrier in combating the fraud, abuse, and waste activities at the agency. Now that we've taken a step in terms of moving forward to modernize our BI capability, how do you start? We recommend that the first step is a current state self-assessment across a number of dimensions to inform the next steps for building the framework. The model that has worked for us is the Federal Data Maturity Model that is available at the ntis.gov website. This model helps to identify current capabilities and also helps conceptualize where you want your organization to be in the long term. It also provides a common language to advance solutions and best practices amongst agencies. The factors are depicted on the left-hand side, while the progression of the analytics capability is shown at the top, right from the basic summary reports all the way through the prescriptive capability. The summary report stage is when there is a basic capability of data like status reporting or mirroring of captured information. In our example of program requirement compliance risk, at this stage, you would see static snapshots in time for each grantee's compliance based on annual reports or bureau evaluations. Descriptive capabilities help compare data year over year and can answer the question, what happened? In this stage for program compliance, we would see historical data for each grantee and the program and would even be able to pinpoint the time when grantee problems began to occur. Diagnostic capabilities help compare data take one more step further to help identify poor performance or operational problems in real time, and they can answer the question, why did it happen? For example, we would be able to identify the factors that led to the poor performance for that grantee, for the program, map those to each grantee over time, and then pinpoint which factors caused the resulting poor performance for one grantee. Predictive capabilities use algorithms and complex data models to predict the impacts of the decisions and policies, answering the question, what will happen if we stay on this trajectory? In this stage, we would use the compliance factors and historical data to then project out the compliance pattern for grantees over the upcoming year. Prescriptive capabilities use very sophisticated models with multiple data sources to answer how can we make it happen. In this stage, the system would model simulations and then tweak or adjust influencing compliance factors to change or modify the future results. As you perform your self-assessment, you may find that you are at different stages for each of the factors. For example, your data management might be done in silos, while the technology perhaps does offer some common data, but no dedicated personnel exist for the data sources. Governance in such a scenario is likely loosely affiliated and not coordinated at the bureau or agency level. Once your self-assessment is complete, we've found that the BI initiative must be advanced along multiple dimensions to get to a data-driven decision-making mindset. Our approach has been to work across all of these dimensions to make progress. The data itself needs to be structured for multiple user skills and levels. Access has to be identified, whether it's only going to be for internal staff or your external grantees or external public or both. And some standards also need to be defined for common data elements. In our experience, the discussions and consensus building for data dictionaries and a common understanding for each data element is often the most time-consuming aspect of the initiative and should be kicked off immediately. Quality is also a critical aspect. It's key to building trust for users, which then in turn drives user adoption. This can sometimes require executive or program management championship across the agency. We have found that automating the data validation and cross-referencing multiple sources has the biggest impact on data quality. The right tools must be chosen for storage, management, and visualization. When done right, these enable effective collaboration and cultural adoption. Decisions like record management, visualization tools, and application integrations must be made along the way. We had to plan and conduct a few decision analysis and recommendations, also known as DARs, to get the right choices for these. Governance provides the common policies, data lifecycle principles, and processes that are required to manage and enhance the data. This helps move all the stakeholders in one common direction. Working with our key stakeholders, we created and documented the governance strategy for both the data itself and the self-service features like accessing and publishing the information. A centralized federal function was created to then manage the governance over time. Focused organizational change management in the form of training, roadshows, and demonstrations is needed to increase awareness and the value proposition of the available data and the tool sets. We tackled this right from the start with a detailed communication plan and stakeholder analysis. We found that roadshows conducted before the first rollout proved to be a good visual marketing tool to users about upcoming capabilities. We also dedicated a full resource for hands-on, in-person support after the release. As the governance, technology, and data becomes more established, the overall analytic capability increases, along with the capacity to do more sophisticated analyses. This then eventually shapes the way decisions are made. Finally, all the dimensions come together to help create a mindset shift and influence data-driven culture for the agency. We've used an agile BI approach to tackle all of these dimensions, picking up critical slices from each factor when needed. So for example, when we got the analytics and data for our first rollout, we kicked off adoption activities primarily only for the super users. As we enhanced the data and the analytics, we then rolled out additional change management to a broader set of users. We've had the opportunity to codify this framework at an HHS agency, helping to answer questions, for this case in the grants context. This framework, however, can be used broadly in many other contexts like case management, project management, acquisitions, and even customer relationship management. Some of the additional questions that we were able to answer. Funding reconciliation was one of the biggest challenges the agency was facing across the various grants processes. Using our new BI platform, we were able to display funding details for all the processes that were involved, including data from non-grant management systems like appropriations or bureau budgets. Another challenge the agency faced was the ability of their teams to handle workloads, particularly in programs that had seasonal fluctuations. Our solution was to model the workload patterns that can predict the number of staff necessary to process grant activities at a given time. For the programs that had begun to measure outcomes and performance data, we were able to plot their performance over time and identify root causes of poor performance. By exposing risk data, risk scores, and risk factors at the enterprise level, programs now have access to critical data in their application evaluation process, which helps to weed out grantees that are most likely to fail. We have many other such examples that have eventually led to fantastic usage of our solution. Now that we've discussed why and how we formulated our BI modernization framework, my colleague Ankit is going to walk us through the implementation.
Thanks, Ruchita, for giving an insight into our data strategy. I'll provide an overview of our grant analytics solution, which has been implemented using the framework that Ruchita just explained. We have been able to successfully leverage this solution at multiple agencies like NHHS OpDev, NASA, and USAID. Implementation of an analytics solution includes two major aspects, the framework and the user base of the agency. How can one solution cater towards the varying business needs and different user sophistication levels? Our solution supports staff members of an agency along with the managers and executive members, as well as analysts and developers. All the roles have different interactions with the analytic solution. Staff can access direct dashboards and reports. Analysts utilize the self-service capability to regenerate insights for their team or supervisors, while developers help in integrating data from multiple sources and continuously enhance reporting models. To understand the details, we will now do a deeper dive in our analytics solution. The best practices and framework discussed in this webinar are shared in context with grants. However, these principles apply equally well to acquisitions, case management, customer relationship management, etc. We have implemented the solution at separate agencies with separate scenarios, like NASA for SBIR programs and USAID for enterprise reporting. Our grant analytics platform supports data for different kinds of grant management systems and performance reporting systems, providing structured to semi-structured data. Our platform is agnostic to the source of data. It accepts transactional data from legacy or modern systems and also from multiple databases like SQL Server, Oracle, or PostgreSQL. It supports external sources, preferably through API data imports. And in case of legacy systems, we also allow automatic file imports. Let me give you an example. At HHS, staff needed payment data, which was only available through a payment management system via automatic file imports. We also needed geocoded location data through API calls from another HHS system. Our solution was able to accept both types of external sources at the same time. We have improved our platform incrementally. One of the recent enhancements includes crunching of machine logs along with the application error logs to provide search-based analytics in near real time for customer support and infrastructure security management staff. Example, let's consider a scenario where a customer is not able to log in into the application and calls customer care center. Customer care staff may not have all the information necessary to help the customer, or their suggestions don't work and customer gets frustrated. Using our solution, however, the customer support staff is able to use the steps performed by the user in near real time and recommend the next steps to resolve the login problem. whether that is password reset, account reset, or anything else. We have recently begun to add social media data, primarily for sentiment analysis being performed on Twitter feeds. This data helps in generating the insights from the areas struck with natural disasters, which require attention from federal agencies. This helps agencies prioritize both resource deployments and recovery funds. Data layer is the key area of the platform where all the data mashup happens. Data fetched from multiple sources gets cleaned, transformed, and stored as easy-to-use reporting models. These models are organized by business domains, which we will deep dive into in upcoming slide. Our platform has a real data transformation service based on microservice principles. The service is the key capability that provides high reusability of this platform for other agencies. So what does that mean? The service accepts structured or semi-structured data from transaction systems, transforms it on the fly, and converts the data into an intuitive reporting model. So how did we use this? Workload monitoring within an agency is a key aspect of operational analytics. Our service fetches the workload data from source systems and allows users to visualize their workload, identify the bottlenecks, and redistribute the work accordingly. And all of this was possible due to this real-time data transformation service. As a recent enhancement, we have now started to take the advantage of having high integrity data at a centralized location to build a repository of advanced analytical models, which are used to predict outcomes of grant programs and predict future workload for a team or even an entire division or office for that matter. Data layer is powered by multiple incremental data pipelines, reading data from different sources, updating the reporting models in near real time. These pipelines create extensive logs about their execution cycle, data transfer size, amount of time, etc. These pipelines have rollback mechanisms in place, which helps the platform to provide higher availability of the data to the end users at all the time. Our platform offers a wide variety of capabilities that can span across an agency and meet varying business needs. Intuitive and actionable dashboards and strategic scorecards, the powerful embedded analytics, robust yet nimble self-service analytics, and intelligent predictive analytics. We have categorized these capabilities by their use cases into enterprise BI versus team or personal BI. We will discuss more about this categorization in our upcoming slides. When the high-level requirements or business needs of the capabilities were identified a couple of years ago, we performed an extensive analysis of alternatives exercise, and Tableau was a clear winner due to the ease of use and wide variety of their features. The foundation of our platform is based on Tableau. However, it does include tools like R and Python, which are being used for advanced analytic use cases. We also extended embedded analytics capability of Tableau by providing a generic microservice to create fully accessible Section 508 compliant views for Tableau dashboards. This was a key requirement for our implementation during enterprise-wide rollout. In our experience in implementing such solutions, we have seen a high growth in the adoption of the platform, especially after introducing self-service analytics feature. We have seen this trend in more than one implementation. Like in USAID project, more than 70 power users across 25 operating units had created over 300 dashboards through self-service capability within a year. I could probably go on and on about the technical aspects of this implementation, but in interest of time, we will move on to the outcomes now, and please do feel free to contact us after the webinar if you would like more details. Empowered staff is the most important outcome of this effort. The platform democratizes the power of insight generation and decision making among the agency staff. They are able to make evidence-based decisions and as a result, eliminate the traditional dependency on IT staff. Agency's leadership is able to provide increased transparency of their strategic goals, priorities, and results to its staff and as well as Congress through the agency-wide dashboards and strategic scorecards built. Operational dashboards provide insights into key business process areas for an agency. It helps policymakers to identify the bottlenecks or steps that consume most amount of time. Hence, helps in improving the business process. Effective planning is an outcome of the combination of diagnostic and predictive analytics, where the frontline managers are able to manage workload of their staff through operational dashboards more effectively. They can use predictive models to visualize the peaks in the future workload across the year and improve the planning of future opportunities accordingly. We talked about domain-based reporting models on the previous slide. Now I will elaborate on the domain-based organization approach, provide insight into its benefits to other agencies. Our data architecture organizes 3,000 plus fields from different phases of grants lifecycle using business domains and support tailoring of views based on grants officers. Our example, again, is in the grants domain, but can be easily applied to many domains by switching out the grants lifecycle with the relevant lifecycle or the phases of your domain. As you can see, this is a cube graphic showing multiple perspectives of the same data. The grants lifecycle show a typical list of grant phases like planning, application, review, etc., which is common to the most grant-making agencies. Organization structure of an agency or a bureau shows multiple offices or divisions that are involved. The domain-based approach provides best of both worlds to the government by merging both the lifecycle and organization structure perspectives together. The typical question of what should be included in the first release of such a project becomes super simple with this approach. For our implementation, we picked workload domain. This domain included data from all grant phases like planning, selection, or award, and impacts most of the sub-organization within the agency. The workload domain was completed within less than 40 different data elements and included the workload data for the entire agency. Hence, the domain-based approach proves most valuable and requires least amount of effort. Since our platform follows 6 core principles of the analytics framework, it scales easily to meet ever-growing needs for analytics at an agency, ranging from enterprise BI to team BI or personal BI. Each needs to be used in specific scenarios based on the need. Our solution offers each one and allows government data managers to make appropriate decisions about their projects and investments. Let me take an example of workload monitoring dashboards. An workload dashboard requires real-time data and needs to cater to the agency-wide audience at different levels, like division directors, team leads, or individual staff members. This dashboard must provide fully accessible views, near real-time, the data refresh, and high security and access control features. Hence, such dashboard needs to be developed in the enterprise BI category. The next few slides show the example of workload dashboards at an HHS object. Please note the workload dashboards that we are showing today use mock data. At the top, you will see multiple filters and allow users to see the data of their interest. The dashboard is intelligent enough to tailor the view based on the logged-in user's profile. We have placed a few summary cards that helps identify key numbers at the top, followed by the widgets showing workload data from multiple perspectives. These dashboards have help content available right next to the dashboard title, as whenever a user is a little puzzled, they can simply click on it and understand where they are. This dashboard allows a senior bureau official to visualize all the workload for their organization. The interactive features allow them to find insights quickly. Example, If a grants administrator wants to figure out whether his or her team will meet the target date for releasing all the awards by the end of the month, he can click on Grant Awards Process in the first bar widget on the top left, and the dashboard will filter to show the list of users who have only those award tasks, the status of each, and how many days they have been in the current status. If one specialist has very high number of tasks assigned, the administrator can then decide to reallocate the work to someone with a lower task load so that the team can collectively meet the awards deadline. The same dashboard has the ability to render data for a specific team within the bureau and office. Allows the team lead to visualize and manage the workload of his or her staff. Team lead has the capability to drill down to workload of individual staff members, but only to within his or her team. We have prepared a tailored version of the workload dashboard for staff members like project officers or grant specialists. The staff members can utilize this dashboard to prioritize their tasks for the day. Follow up with the supervisors if they have not completed their review tasks in time. Such tools help agency leadership to improve accountability in the organization and improve processing times. Here is an example of personal BI dashboard, which one of our analysts was able to prepare for a demonstration in a matter of few hours. This is considered personal BI because the dashboard uses public data, and a lot of security and access control requirements do not apply. Tableau makes an art of storytelling really simple. The layout is fluid, allowing for the multiple data points to be placed anywhere on the screen and still looks pretty. The colors and the themes are easy to apply. Our platform powered by Tableau provides agility required for such a dashboard to display the data insights in a short turnaround time. One of the major outcomes at our implementation within an HHS OpDev was 40% reduced time to insights, which was a result of over 238 agency staff using self-service analytic capabilities to generate insights on their own and significantly reduce the dependency on IT support staff. $1 million savings resulted from the reusable aspects of the framework and automation tools applied at different stages. This solution also allowed the programs to easily quantify their mission impacts in a very concise way. These metrics come from a program that were looking to quantify the benefits in substance abuse, substance use disorder, and mental health areas. And this data, the source, as you can see, is the ACT-IAC Igniting Innovation Awards 2018, as mentioned by Jeff earlier. Now that we have discussed our strategy and implementation in detail, let's spend a few minutes talking about what's next for BI and major trends we see that can be leveraged for incorporating into our BI solution roadmap. Emerging BI trends. Consumption and the interaction of analytics has been focused on drag and drop style dashboards or visualizations for a long time. While there continues to be value in that, more and more there are approaches available for what can be categorized as conversational analytics and search-driven analytics, simplifying the analyses, finding, and storytelling so that users more easily find and navigate to what data element or data point they are after. ARIA has built skills for Alexa to integrate with Tableau and allows users to find their preferred data points faster. We had demonstrated this feature at Tableau's Government Summit in Feb 2018, a little earlier this year. In the future, we also plan to work on a proof of concept with a cloud-based tool called ThoughtSpot. This tool allows users to type their question, have the platform understand the meaning, and then see a dashboard in response, without having to drag and drop and understand the data complexities behind the scenes. Among the emerging trends, the key question is how machine learning will help the analyst. We believe the machine learning is the best assistant to the analyst. Similar to how an assistant saves time in doing mundane tasks, Machine learning can save time performing basic linear regression, identifying problems in the data to be addressed, and predicting patterns unknown to human minds and statistical modeling. We do believe that more and more agencies will focus on their data efforts and dedicate staff to reaping the benefits of modernized BI solutions. We see a lot of promise in impacting agencies' mission through powerful analytics and evidence-based decision-making. We hope you got a helpful taste of how we approach our BI solution. We now open the floor to your questions.
So we just had a question come through. The question was, could you elaborate a little bit on user adoption? So sure, we can do that. In our implementations, we've used a multi-pronged approach for user adoption. There are several different aspects that we offer. Obviously, we had the focused in-class trainings. We call them boot camps, and staff would come and attend and get their hands on the system, get introduced to the layouts, the tools, etc. We had once the staff started, the group started using the tool, we also implemented weekly training sessions where we would pick topics of the week and focus and deep dive into certain areas that staff could come and attend. As we rolled out the system, we provided videos for users. So as they were in the tool and they forgot how to access a widget or drill down, we had quick and easy 2-minute videos to showcase the overall navigation and how to use the tool, but also how to use some of the most critical features. I think one of the best, most used aspects that we had was we created sort of office hours for some dedicated personnel to be at the agency where as people were working on their own reports and dashboards, they could come in, ask certain questions, get their questions answered. Our resources were also able to help them on their dashboards and move forward. So we've done a few different things. And as I mentioned earlier in my section, we also had road shows that we started before the first rollout. So we were able to showcase visuals of what the dashboards were going to look like and how they would help people. We sort of set them up in the cafeteria or common areas, so anyone walking by would be able to see what was coming and when it was coming. Okay, we have another question. How long did the first release take? So Ankit, if you want to answer that.
Sure. Thanks, Rishta. This is a good question. Whoever asked, thanks a lot. I think we missed this point. So how much time did we take? I think, again, getting the consensus among all the key stakeholders in an agency-wide initiative, that was, I would say, the most complex and the time-consuming part. I would say since we began the project, maybe around 6 months, because we have to talk about all our strategy, what you guys saw today, all of those concepts to different stakeholders, and everybody has, of course, different perspective to it. So that took a lot of time, that's 6 months. But after that, for us to deploy the first release using financial domain, it was just a matter of less than 90 days, because we followed the agile principles. And again, this task or this entire solution is not that tough as long as we know how to do it right. So just the 90 days for the first release. However, of course, the overall initiative includes the consensus building and everything as well. I hope I answered your question to satisfactory level. Thanks.
We have another question about if it is possible to share more screenshots to understand what the screens look like. So some of the mock-ups that we use today were from a specific client who has asked to remain confidential. So not sure we can share those screenshots directly, but we can share mock-ups if needed for the kind of dashboards that we are able to produce using the data we have.
So there's a question about, I'm sorry, let's look at that one. Yeah, there's a question about can we provide more detail about the types of grant program analytics. So we've actually used these same analytics for a variety of grant programs. Those include discretionary grants as well as block grants. And of course, under discretionary, a lot of those would be competitive grants and peer reviewed. And then as well, the kinds of block grants include formula grants and a range of other sorts of block grants.
Okay, there's another question. How often is data fed into the BI solution? Ankit, you want to take that?
Sure. Thanks, Ruchita. So again, good question. There are several approaches, and implementation-wise as well, we have more than 3 which are currently working at our at least 2 different implementations at agencies. First one is the simple one, which is the incremental data updates. This is something the data pipelines I have talked about in the initial section, where it's able to easily fetch the changes of the data which is there in the transaction system, and our data pipelines are able to transform it for the easy to use reporting models. The second area was much more complex, where we were transforming the data in near real time from a semi-structured source. And that's where the place where I would say the value comes into picture, because it's a reusable service, microservice as well, and it fetches the data from different performance reporting systems, whichever uses the JSON structure, and it can transform it into the easy to use reporting model which we have prepared in our data layer. These are the 2 which are currently being used widely, at least in our implementation.
Okay, and the next question is how are the data sources integrated to aid in analysis via Tableau?
Sure. So this is I think the data layer, the reporting models which we have talked about. That's the place which we have done most of the data integration before Tableau hits the data. And the reason why was because it's an enterprise-wide implementation. And in that case, we generally do not want separate users of different offices, divisions, or analysts to actually integrate the data from multiple sources on their own. And that's why we had the data layer as one of the key aspects where all the mashup of the data occurs. However, once that is done and still an analyst get to see a system which was maybe a public source of data, like maybe US Census Bureau or something like that, which is not there in the system, then it's all the matter of the self-service capability which Tableau provides, and also the newer tools like Tableau Prep. All of those things becomes really handy, but then it's a matter of the analyst is able to merge them in the right fashion or not. But we have seen in our experience that once 80 to 90% of the data is already integrated, and then the additional aspects are just the few spreadsheets which are not in the system, and the questions that you cannot predict, they become really easy to merge. And if at all any analyst of our federal members have questions, they are able to reach out to our Tableau SMEs on the ground and hopefully getting their work done with breeze.
One of the benefits about the agile approach here is that often with the self-service, an individual member of the government agency might come up with a great idea that is actually strongly appealing to a number of other members of that agency. And at that point, instead of just having them kind of do it on a self-service, we may try and bring that data source into the data layer on a kind of a permanent basis so that it's more easily accessible to everyone, and again, to kind of reduce the effort. We did have another question actually kind of clarifying a previous one. We are happy to release these slides, and we can send them out to all the folks who are registered. If you didn't register, or if you're in a group who's listening and only one person is registered, please feel free to email us. And would they like to email you, Rajita, or me, or what do you think?
Yes.
Okay, so Rajita will give you her email address, and if for some reason you're not on our registration list, you can email Rajita to ask for the slides.
Sure. My email address is rujuta.waknis, and that's spelled as RUJUTA.WAKN as in Nancy, IS, at reisystems.com. We have another question. Can you provide an example of a predictive model that is available in Tableau?
Thanks. So predictive models, at least which are using, there are a couple of them. Which one is the workload one, and the others are primarily in our roadmap, and which we are actively working towards. The workload one, what it does is it's not that difficult. It utilizes the historical data, which we have more than 10 years worth of data of grants management and the workload. We are able to see the patterns across the year. What are the days, what are the weeks or months which have the spikes, and able to model that out for the future coming years. Then second activity we do is we check what kind of opportunities are getting funded and how the appropriation dollars are getting increased or even decreased for the future years, and accordingly lay it out for the grants life cycle for the entire next 6 months to 12 months, that how it would additionally impact the workload. So this is the one use case. The second use case is a little more complicated, which is regarding the grant program outcomes, and which is much more in the research and the POC states right now. Over there, we are able to, of course, utilize the program data, the policy information, and the data which is provided by the health centers. And what we are able to do is able to utilize the what associative rule mining, ideally, that how these different parameters or the different metrics depend upon each other, and what are the patterns which make a good health center or a good grantee, and what kind of who's providing a better outcomes, and then finding those areas and then providing the similar areas to other users or the other health centers. That's the objective of this second model, which I would say we're still in the early stages. Thank you.
The next question is if we have done prescriptive modeling for our implementation.
So this is one area I would say it is in the emerging BI trends for us. As we said, machine learning is out there. We are all super excited with that section of the work. That I think it's very early in our more innovation labs per se. But yes, as of now, nothing is in an active pilot mode from prescriptive perspective. But yeah, there are ideas. Maybe a few months down the road, we'll be closer to that. Sure. Thank you.
So the next question is, what role did the business play in tool design? Ankit, why don't you go ahead and
Sure. So this is what I referred to, I think 5 minutes back, to the consensus, which really took, I would say, 6 months. The one part is, of course, you have to get all the stakeholders on the similar agreement and the buy-in in the strategic, what you call the FDMM framework, then the analytics strategy. But after that, then we, of course, jump that hurdle. When we are in the domain-based approach of actual implementation, users have a really key role in it, because they helped us identify what are the key elements, right? Because in the transaction systems which we have built for our customers, we have more than literally 6,000 data elements. But we don't have all that data elements, or sorry, 6,000 tables with multiple data elements, not even 6,000 data elements. So the number would be like super crazy number of data points, but all of them are not used by end users in reporting perspective. All of them are not used in building insights. So that factor is the only end users, the actual analysts, what kind of questions they have been receiving in the past. However they did it, that was not important, but at least they received the questions, right? And what kind of answers they were looking for. So that was, of course, was the key factor, and that's how they helped us identify or shape the platform.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, we also did this in an agile way. So we had continuous engagement from the business as we were building the data sets, the data mart, and the reports and dashboards. So we were able to adapt When we got feedback about, oh, this is missing or that isn't there, we were able to adapt as we went along, making sure that the business had what they needed.
One other comment I would tag on is that another client, in this case the Department of Homeland Security, there was a great deal of concern across the enterprise as we worked with them at the department level about certain types of data that were owned by a certain component of the department. The owners of that data from the business were very nervous about being able to, about the sharing of their data and about whether or not it might be interpreted correctly. And so kind of having the business continuously involved in both helping structure the tool and access to the data, and whether or not there would be permission to share the data with other individuals or whether there would be permission to share it across the department, those kinds of governance questions, it was important to have a very frequent interaction, both over sharing of the data, authorization to publish it, and other sorts of topics. So yeah, especially in an agile format, but in general, where there are a variety of different contributors of data, they need to know how it's used and be comfortable that it's going to be interpreted correctly. I think we're just about out of time, so let me turn it back to Khalid from Tableau and say thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. And again, please feel free to email Rajuta. Her email once again is rujuta.waknis@reisystems.com. But thank you for joining. Khalid?
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to thank all participants as well as our speakers for being with us today. We hope this information you received during this presentation has been helpful for you and your organization. Our contact information is currently displayed on your screen, so please do not hesitate to call or email us with any of your needs. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.